Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with James Irvine, the founder of Pitch Night. Good afternoon in your case, James, right?
Hey, good to be here, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career back in about 2008, 2010 in banking and finance in New York, which was kind of a rough time for the whole industry. And I was part of JP Morgan's intern and analyst program, bounced around through a handful of different departments, and most of them at the time were being consolidated or outsourced to India, Delaware, you name it. So after bouncing around for a while through JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch, I just kind of got burnt out on big corporate and the banking industry. And I decided I wanted to jump into the startup industry and see what it was all about. It was one of the popular things to do at the time. So yeah, about 3 years ago, I left that behind and dove headfirst into startup industry. My first project was a pitch competition called Pitch Night. It started as Pitch Night NYC, and then as it grew to other cities, we're now Pitch Night. And that was really your standard pitch competition. We bring in some startups, have them pitch in front of some venture capitalists and entrepreneurs and an audience, and select a winner. And that was really my first endeavor into the startup world, sort of a top of funnel brand magnet for myself. And from there, I've gone in several different directions, got my hand in a few different things now, working with startups, accelerator programs, in a very number of capacities.
Wow. So joining JP Morgan and Chase, or was it the other one, in 2008, that had to be, I can see why you switched. That was a tough time to get into banking.
It was, yeah. Yeah, one of my projects was, I was like 19, 20 at the time. I was still an intern. One of my projects, JP Morgan had just bought up the remainder of what was left of Bear Stearns. And they were shipping out that office. And one of the projects was going around and inventorying everybody and how they did their job so I can put together the reports, because they were going to send most of the stuff to India.
Wow, that's
yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employer and an employee?
Yeah, so remote work has really been pretty much a part of it throughout. So it's not something that's new or different. When I was in banking, we had a lot of our back office stuff was in India and Delaware. So I was always coordinating with teams there. As Europe as well, we had desks in Europe. So I was always really, communicating with people across a lot of different locations. So as that was my first step into the working world. It's always just been very natural to work across locations. I saw it become more and more prevalent, right? So when I started at JP Morgan, we had in Manhattan, I think, something like 7 or 8 full buildings. And by the time I left the banking industry, we were down to probably like 4 or 5, right? So they got just reducing their real estate footprint, their New York employment workforce, cutting costs, outsourcing where they could. So I really saw how, the big companies, this is the route they're going to go and continue to pursue. And then there was also sort of this moment too, where some of the desks and some of the jobs I was in, I really wanted remote work and capabilities. There was, all I needed was a phone and a laptop, but they would make me be at the desk every day, 8, 9 a.m. to, whatever time. And, it was always frustrating because my friends in tech could have more remote capabilities and flexibility. So it's just like, that was one of definitely the reasons for leaving. It definitely factored in. And then, as I got into startup world, remote work is really just, again, part of it. We communicate with teams all over. I'll do work on the go, which is great. And so I think one of the things I see being in the startup industry, right, is remote work isn't evenly distributed right now, right? When we talk about remote work, a lot of people think about like the tech industry and, just being able to do everything from anywhere, but it's not like that across a lot of industries. For example, one of the startups who pitched at Pitch Night not too long ago is really trying to get remote work to be implemented more effectively in the movie studio and the film crew industry, right? There's still very much, work 1.0, 2.0-ish, right? And they haven't really adopted a lot of the tools and the practices that are much more common in sort of the more tech-enabled fields in the startup industry. So yeah, that's kind of high level. And then ways I personally, use remote work. Right now, I'm working with a few accelerators. Because of COVID, we've had to move all of those online. So now everybody's scattered. We just run everything virtually. And it's actually much more seamless in a lot of ways. The one that I was directing here in Miami, we would meet every Tuesday night from about 6:30 to about 9:30 p.m. And getting the participants to come, travel to a central location, getting the mentors who would come in and teach the sessions to travel, and the directors, myself and my partner, we'd all have to go meet at one central location. As the director, having to coordinate all of those logistics, it's a lot harder than just sending out a Zoom link. So yeah, I just think remote work is going to continue to remain a very dominant force and become more and more prevalent in a lot of different ways just because of the convenience factor. Don't get me wrong, I really, really miss doing things in person and going to grab a coffee or have a meeting or doing the pitch competitions in a room full of people. But you can't argue with the time and cost savings of remote work. So
yeah, and the combinators, I mean, they used to all have, like, I know there's a bunch of them in San Francisco. The people that actually moved to San Francisco, that's no longer necessary, right? They can be anywhere in the world and still take part, right?
Yep. Yeah, just because of what I do, I deal with a lot of people in Silicon Valley day to day.
Yeah. Cool. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? You just broke up a bit.
What do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
Sure. So the future of remote, I see a lot of different ways that are poking up. And as I said, it's not uniform, right? The tech industry is really emerging into like what I would call like work 3.0, where if you think of work 1.0 was like everybody in the same office doing the same thing under one roof. Work 2.0 was sort of this distributed across different offices with some capability. And now 3.0 is where just the entire process end to end is going to be managed remote. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space. I think the hiring is an area that interests me a lot in the space. That's one of the areas that I don't think has been cracked effectively. There's just so many X factors that go into hiring the right person. And there's a ton of companies I'm seeing, ton of startups who are, throwing big data and AI and machine learning and all of the tools that are out there at this to try to come up with, more efficient ways of recruiting and finding and hiring. So I think that's going to be a very big opportunity. You're going to see some very large, successful companies emerge out of that. And then, yeah, industry specific, I won't get into because, like I said, it varies across a lot. One of the things that interests me that I've been thinking about a little bit is just more distributed work. And I'm wondering how that's going to evolve, where people aren't even going to hire so much like one person anymore. It'll be more like we're going to syndicate the work. And this might be, just a very startup Silicon Valley concept, but I have a feeling it's going to take hold a little bit, just seeing how, deals are syndicated, investments are syndicated. I feel like work is going to be a natural progression, especially in startup land where they're so used to communicating across teams, where, I think it'll be more, we're going to have our, 10, 20, 30, 50 people in our network. We'll post a project and somebody can just go on and grab it for, a few dollars, similar to like an Upwork or whatever. But I think it'll be, more localized with technology, so that, you don't have as much downtime with employees.
Yeah. No, I actually did a podcast a couple of weeks ago with a company that does exactly that. They actually have 2 founders. It's just them, and they have different teams that do different things at different times.
Nice. You're gonna have to share with me that startup so I can take a look at it.
I will. All right. So what is the story behind Pitch Night? You've touched on it a little bit. It sounds like it's your little brainchild. Give me an example of a typical startup you would deal with.
Yeah, so typical startup is somewhere about the pre-seed stage. So they have basically a minimum viable product, probably some traction, whether that's just beta customers or a few paying customers. They're really just getting up and ready to launch. And that's sort of the niche that we target with Pitch Night. I noticed that there was sort of a gap for events for that niche. A lot of the more advanced pitch competitions really focused on the ones who were, up and running, had good monthly recurring revenue, maybe some investor dollars already. So we're industry agnostic. I've seen almost everything you can think of: healthcare, biomeds, AI, green tech, you name it. We'll do industry specific nights from time to time, but we're mostly a generalist. So yeah, the concept behind it is every month we bring in 4 startups. They'll pitch in front of the audience and judges, like I said. And it's really just a way for everybody involved to get some collective value from the group. The startups get exposure, practice. The entrepreneurs and investors get to see some up and coming startups that they may not have gotten the chance to form that early relationship with. And the people in the audience, they get to see the process and learn from the process. And it really just took off really, really well and has been very well received. So virtual has been a little bit of a pivot with it. We've slowed it down just a bit because we're seeing a lot of Zoom fatigue right now as real life starts to open back up, but we can't do in-person events right now. So we pumped the brakes on the events from now. We haven't been doing them monthly, but the next one will be in December.
And do you still stick to New York, or do you have these all over the country now?
Yeah, so on Zoom, the geography is now taken away. I was trying to do where we would just keep it with geographical startups and geographical judges. But the inbound requests were just coming from all over. So we opened it up and just said, here's generalist pitch night, apply from anywhere. We've been getting a lot of requests from international, which is really cool. Got some companies from Malaysia found me. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, very cool. So the ongoing pandemic caused everybody to go remote. Obviously, it had an effect on you. You've already said that because you've had to scale back a little bit. But did that cause any other real roadblocks or challenges for you or for the companies that do the pitching?
Yeah, I think there was a bit of roadblocks coupled with a handful of opportunities, in the same swoop. So like I said, being in the same room, you really get that closer connection, that face-to-face. So a little bit of the authenticity has been lost over Zoom, but the ease and the speed at which things can happen now, I think outweighs the negative. We can spin up an event very quickly. We can get people who otherwise would not have been able to participate, either because they're just too busy or because they had to travel. Especially once you get into the more successful entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, right? They're very, very busy people. So now we can get bigger brand names because all they got to do is log on for an hour. Whereas opposed to previously, it was probably a 3-hour commitment between taking the subway, showing up, doing the event, and getting back home. That's 3-4 hour commitment. That could be flying dinners, work, time away from family.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're at home. They don't mind logging on for a bit. It's from the startup world, I think it's probably about the same. I don't think it's been made any easier for them because of COVID. I think it's most of the outbound was kind of done on LinkedIn and via cold email and just networking to begin with. So yeah, I mean, networking over Zoom is, some people love it, some people hate it. I'm kind of indifferent. It's just the way that it is. And I think it's, going to continue to be a big part of everything going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm pretty much the same. It's kind of like, yeah, we're meeting on Zoom now and eventually we'll be back together again. And, but I think there'll still be this Zoom. I don't think this will go away. I think it'll just be now more of a blend. It will be, both will be going forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll find a balance, right? Whereas about, a month ago or 2 months ago, the entire day was on Zoom, right? It's just Zoom, 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 Zoom.
I know.
Now I kind of break it up and I'll say, let me throw in a phone call just so I'm not staring at the screen so much, kind of scaling back the number of Zooms. And, for people closer in my network, we can still meet up, social distance at a cafe or whatever. So yeah, I think really the pandemic didn't do anything except push things a little bit faster in the direction they were already going. So just by nature, we're more and more using our phones, more and more using our computers as a functionality. 5G is out now, right? So you can do Zooms on the go. So this was already going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. It did accelerate. And Florida is actually one of the more open states right now, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that gives you, a little bit more leeway than maybe someone in another state like New York.
Yeah, Florida's been an interesting, Miami in particular has been an interesting roller coaster ride. So I did quarantine up in New York for a bit when over the summer all of the craziness was really happening here.
Yeah.
But New York wasn't that much better. But,
right. Yeah, my son was up there too at the same time, and he did a lot of quarantine. So finally, there's companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups, and you deal with startups all the time. So how important do you think that is going to be for these startups to be able to hire technical people from anywhere in the world to really help build their product?
Yeah, it's super important. And so in the accelerator program I run, Founder Institute, this is always a hot topic of debate because a lot of the startups, they're just trying to launch their ideas. So a lot of them want to have a technical co-founder, hire a CTO, maybe don't have the money. So there's always this great debate of, should you have a technical co-founder or can you do things with, templates? And I think more and more, just in the past even like 2 years, the conversation is leaning more towards, it's fine, just unless you're developing really proprietary technology, do things with templates. If you're a two-sided marketplace or you're doing some sort of locational app, like they have, a lot of that stuff's built. And, it's not cheap, it might be a $30,000 package, but still, I don't know, a third of the cost of hiring a CTO.
Correct.
So Yeah, I think, more and more, it's just going to become prevalent. A lot of the dev shops that I'm close with and recommend, I know half of the work is done in-house. They're basically project managers. They ship it out to, being in Miami, a lot of it's done in LATAM or like Ukraine. But yeah, India is a popular one. When I was in New York, a lot of people were shipping it to India. So yeah, it's just the way things are being done right now. So if you have connections in other countries and can kind of bypass the project managers here, then get things done really effectively and cheaply. But yeah, if you're a startup here and you need sort of that middle layer, then I think some of these dev shops that have the capability to either build custom things or have pre-made kind of pre-built things are just a great way to spin up your thing really quickly and cost effectively, for sure.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think if your product is a unique technology, you need to have that technical expertise in house. But other than that, you don't, right?
Yeah. I mean, most of the startups, they get this. This is something I see founders getting very confused about, right? There's two different types of startups, right? There's business execution side startups where the success of the business really just comes down to operations and execution, and you're not doing anything innovative. It's maybe just a variation of something else, right? You're the Uber of something or the Airbnb of something. People love to use those buzzwords. And then there are the startups who are truly innovating on a niche, right? You're in the deep tech space, or you're developing new applications for VR and AR, right? Where the coding and the application of it is completely new. Like if you're founding a company like Magic Leap, right? That's where you're going to develop all of this stuff, and it's new, it's proprietary, and that's really where the value is in the IP that you're going to create. And it doesn't really matter, how, not that it doesn't matter, but the business operation sides is less important than if you can develop a really, really great cutting edge technology. Whereas if you're going to do a new type of food delivery platform, you don't need to develop anything proprietary, right? The success of your business is going to come down to, can you get customers to pay repeatedly, right? And of course, your app and your website have to look good and work, but you really don't need to be reinventing the wheel here. Just go use Wix, use a firm like yours, just get the thing developed at a minimum level and get the business going. You don't need these advanced CTOs to build anything crazy and new.
Yeah, I agree. Well, James, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been very informative, and good luck with Pitch Night and your other venture capital things you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.